In the name of Allah, the Compassionate, the Most Merciful. Peace be upon you, O Sayyida Fatimah Zahra. Peace be upon you, O daughter of the Prophet. Peace be upon you, O wife of Haydar. Peace be upon you, O mother of the Imams. Peace be upon you, O mother of our beloved Mahdi. Peace be upon you, O mourners of Fatimah. Peace be upon you, O witnesses to hidden grief. Peace be upon you, O those who weep for the mistress of the women of the world. Welcome to night one of the Truth Promoters Group Fatimiyyah 2025 program. We gather in these sacred days, heavy with the weight of a tragedy that heaven itself mourned, the martyrdom of Shia, who was the soul of the Prophet, the wife of the successor, and the mother of the Masters of Paradise. Sayyida Fatimah Zahra, peace be upon her, whose light was extinguished by oppression, but whose legacy illuminates every home that seeks to build itself upon divine principles. This series, called Wilayah in the Home, is our humble attempt to honor her by exploring the very foundation she perfected, the Islamic family, built upon faith, sustained by love, and protected by divine guidance. Each night we begin with verses from the Holy Quran, the book that lived in her heart and flowed from her lips. Tonight's recitation is from Surah Al-Rum, the chapter of the Romans, 30th chapter of the Quran, verse 21, on the divine signs of marriage. Surah Al-Baqarah, the chapter of the cow, 2nd chapter of the Quran, verse 187, on the spouses being garments for each other. Surah Al-Hujurat, the chapter of the chambers, 49th chapter of the Quran, verse 19, on true nobility. Surah Al-Nur, the chapter of the light, 24th chapter of the Quran, verse 34, on divine enrichment. Surah An-Nisa, the chapter of the women, 4th chapter of the Quran, verse 19, on living with kindness. Surah Al-Sharh, the chapter of the opening of the heart, 94th chapter of the Quran, verse 6, on divine ease in hardship. Surah Al-Baqarah, the chapter of the cow, 2nd chapter of the Quran, verse 156, on patience in trials. You can view the full verses along with their visual presentation on www.islamicdigest.org.
In the name of God, the Merciful, the Especially Merciful.
And of his signs is that he created for you spouses from among yourselves, so that you may find rest in them, and he put between you affection and compassion. Most surely there are signs in this for people who reflect. They are a garment for you, and you are a garment for them. Indeed, the most noble of you in the sight of God is the most righteous of you. If they are poor, God will enrich them out of his grace, and God is all bounteous, all knowing. Indeed, with hardship comes ease. Those who, when calamity strikes them, say, "Truly we belong to God, and truly to him we shall return."
Welcome back. We now turn to tonight's poetic couplet, a reflection inspired by the verses you've just encountered. This piece is titled The First Stitch. You can watch the couplet video and read the full text at www.islamicdigest.org.
In love's first thread, we seek not gold, but grace, where souls unite in God's appointed space. The poorest hand that holds to faith sincere becomes enriched when mawadda draws near, for marriage built on taqwa's sacred ground.
We now come to the main session of the evening. Tonight's reflection is Wilayah in the Home, the first stitch, weaving faith into marriage, delivered by Sheikh Shabir Hassan Ali. In this session, we explore how marriage in Islam is not merely a contract, but a sacred covenant, examining the divine blueprint established by God and perfectly embodied in the home of Fatimah and Ali, peace be upon them. The full transcript, complete with references and footnotes, is available at www.reflections313.com.
So I think it's good we start with Surah Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, maliki yawm al-din, iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'een, ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim, sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim, ghayri al-maghdubi alayhim wa ad-dallin, sadaqallahu al-'aliyyul al-'azim. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعن الله ولا أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين آمين يا رب العالمين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. So this is the first session in our three-part series during these nights of Fatimiyyah titled Wilayah in the Home. It's a session or a series focusing on marriage and the family based on the Quran, the traditions of Ahl al-Bayt, and guidance drawn from the teachings of Imam Khamenei, may God protect him. As with our explorations into subjects like, for example, patience, the art of supplication, the lantern of the path, or tabyin, it is strongly recommended that anyone engaging with this engage with the previous sessions prior to this current one. This is due to the cumulative nature of our discussion. The manner of discourse really does require that each part build upon foundations laid in the ones that came before. Proceeding sequentially helps to avoid confusion, misunderstanding, or invalid assumptions, ensuring that we move towards clarity on all of these vital matters. Now, while subsequent sessions in this series will include brief recaps, these are highly summarized. And to grasp the full context and nuance, engaging with, studying, and reflecting upon the preceding sessions is truly essential. Therefore, while these discussions might sometimes feel overly detailed or lengthy, the subject matter is profoundly important. And we request patience and encourage everyone to follow through to the end, following the progression of the series for maximum benefit. God willing, this journey will illuminate the path towards building stronger and God-centric families. Please give me a salawat and we move to the prologue, which is honoring the legacy, establishing the foundation.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد
محمد وعجل.
So in the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God says in Surah Al-Rum, the chapter of the Romans, 30th chapter of the Quran, verse number 21, he says, "And of his signs is that he created for you spouses from amongst yourselves, so that you may find rest in them. And he put between you affection and compassion. Most surely there are signs in this for people who reflect." We gather in these days heavy with remembrance, commemorating the martyrdom of the mistress of the women of the universes, Sayyidah Fatimah Zahra, peace and blessings be upon her and her noble family. It is a time for reflection, not merely on loss, but on the enduring legacy she represented, a legacy intrinsically tied to the very foundation of human society, the family, built upon the divine principles of tranquility or sakina, affection, mawadda, and mercy, rahmah, mentioned in the verse that we just quoted earlier. Now, it might seem conventional to speak, or somewhat cliched even, to speak of women and family during the commemoration of a revered lady. Yet our focus transcends mere convention. We turn to the example of Sayyidah Fatimah, not simply because she was a woman, but because she, alongside the commander of the faithful, Imam Ali, peace and blessings be upon them both, established the quintessential model of an Islamic household, a home based on Wilayah, permeated by divine love and dedicated entirely to the path of God. Her life exemplifies the profound truth that the strength and spiritual well-being of any society are woven within the fabric of its families. Islam designates the family as the fundamental unit, the cell of the societal body. It is the crucible where individuals are formed, where values are transmitted, and the future is shaped. Within this crucial unit, the role of the woman is pivotal. As Imam Khamenei, may God protect him, emphasizes, she is the primary guardian and manager of this sacred space. He says, and like with all of my sessions, you'll find the references in detail within the write-up, which I encourage everyone to review. Imam Khamenei says, the family is brought into existence and managed by the woman. Know this. The essential building block of a family is a woman, not a man. A family can function without a man. If the wife is wise and possesses good management skills, she can still maintain her family. However, if the woman is taken away from the family, the man cannot preserve it. Therefore, it is the lady of the house who keeps the family together. This central role, especially as a mother, involves the profound responsibility of tarbiyyah, nurturing generations with love, patience, and wisdom. When this foundational role is honored, society flourishes. But when it is undermined or neglected, the repercussions are deep and lasting. Yet we live in times where this sacred institution faces unprecedented crises. Across cultures and communities, families grapple with distortions born of materialism, pervasive and often harmful media influences, conflicting cultural pressures, and a departure from the divine principles that ensure stability and tranquility. The path to marriage itself is often fraught with anxieties and un-Islamic expectations, delaying or damaging the formation of blessed unions. Therefore, in turning our hearts towards Sayyidah Fatimah Zahra, we seek not just solace, but guidance. We seek to understand the divine blueprint for family life, as revealed in the Quran and embodied by Ahlul Bayt. This series, titled Wilayah in the Home, aims to offer the timeless wisdom of Islam as a source of healing, clarity, and strength for all who are navigating the journey of marriage and family life, whether preparing for it, striving within it, or seeking to mend it. Our goal in this first session is to lay the correct spiritual and practical foundations, to understand how to weave faith into the very first stitch of the marital bond, ensuring it is strong, purposeful, and oriented towards God from the outset. Please give me a salawat and we move to Wilayah in the Home, the first stitch, weaving faith into the marriage. And we talk about the divine blueprint, marriage as a sacred covenant.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
The journey of marriage in Islam commences not merely as a social arrangement or a means to fulfill personal desires, but as a profoundly spiritual undertaking, a sacred and solemn covenant, mithaq al-ghalid, ordained and blessed by God Himself. This reality is presented as one of His clear signs or ayat for those capable of reflection. In the verse we cited at the beginning, Quran, Surah Ar-Rum, the chapter of the Romans, 30th chapter of the Quran, verse 21, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, and of His signs is that He created for you spouses from amongst yourselves, so that you may find rest in them, and He put between you affection and compassion. Most surely there are signs in this for a people who reflect. So let's now study this Quranic foundation, spouses from amongst ourselves. What does this mean? This verse lays the cornerstone of the Islamic understanding of marriage. God creates spouses from amongst ourselves, min anfusikum, highlighting a shared human essence, equal standing, and an intrinsic compatibility designed by the Creator Himself. The explicit purpose given is litaskunu ilayha, that we may find tranquility, repose, and a dwelling place for the heart in one another. So what does it mean, finding tranquility? What is the purpose of this sacred union? Imam Khamenei explains that this sakina, or tranquility, is the foundational state, a haven from life's inevitable struggles and agitations, making the home a unique sanctuary of peace. He says, and as I've said before, the references for all of this are in the write-up. Imam Khamenei says, he quotes the verse, that you might find rest in them. The fact that the human species is composed of these two genders is not without reason. It is to provide peace and tranquility. This means, for example, when you are by the side of your other half in your home, a man beside his wife and a woman beside her husband, you should feel at peace. Allama Tabatabai further elaborates that this tranquility arises because each gender finds completion and a natural inclination towards the other, fulfilling an inherent need within the human design. Allama says, and this is from Tafsir al-Mizan, again, the references are all in the write-up. Allama says, and his saying, meaning God saying that you may find rest in them, لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا, explains the purpose for which spouses were created. And sukoon, or finding rest in them, means settling down and finding harmony with them, which is one of the branches of love and affection. And what is meant is the tranquility of each of the spouses towards each other. Let's now look at the subject of divine gifts, the placement of love and mercy. Furthermore, God actively places two crucial elements between the spouses, mawadda and rahmah. Mawadda is often understood as a manifested, active love and deep affection specific to spousal relationships. Ayatollah Jawadi Ameli, may God preserve him and protect him, distinguishes it from general compassion, explaining their difference. He says, and this is, of course, the references are in the write-up, the difference between mawadda and rahmah is that mawadda is often reciprocal and accompanied by the expression of heartfelt affection. But rahmah is unilateral and a quality of sacrifice and selflessness, meaning even if harshness comes from the other side, the merciful side still shows kindness. Imam Khamenei, may God protect him, refers to this love as the essential cement binding the couple. He says, love is the cement of any relationship, the fundamental mortar that holds the family together and keeps its foundation strong is love, love, love. Rahmah, on the other hand, signifies compassion, kindness, and tender mercy. It is the empathic care that sustains the bond, enabling spouses to overlook faults and support each other through difficulties, particularly when the initial intensity of mawadda might naturally fluctuate or face challenges. This mercy often arises from seeing the inherent need or weakness in the other, prompting care and kindness. Allama Tabatabai suggests that rahmah is akin to pity or compassion that arises from witnessing a need in another, which then motivates kindness and beneficence towards them. Allama says, and rahmah is compassion, which is turning towards someone out of sympathy. Therefore, love, mahabba, and affection, mawadda, which attract and unite the two parties, like the special inclination between spouses, are followed by rahmah and turning with compassion. It is like a single reality followed by love, from which different branches emerge according to different situations. Let's now look at the theocentric union, God as the unseen third. Crucially, the Quran states God placed both mawadda and rahmah between spouses, indicating that they are divine gifts, actively bestowed to establish and sustain the marital bond, not merely fleeting human emotions. This divine involvement renders marriage inherently theocentric. God is not an external observer, but the central reality and the unseen third in this sacred union. The Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, underscored this vital connection between marriage and faith itself. And in the famous hadith, and of course the references in the write-up, Rasulullah, Prophet Muhammad, he says, Whoever marries has protected half of his religion, so let him fear God regarding the remaining half. And this is a very well-known hadith. Let's now have a look at this completing faith, marriage as half of religion. Marriage, therefore, becomes an act of safeguarding and completing one's religion. The love between spouses achieves its perfection when it becomes rooted in their shared love for God, meaning their love is for God, for each other is for God. This means loving the spouse through God, viewing them as a partner in faith and a blessing that facilitates closeness to Him. As Imam Khomeini, may God rest his pure soul, indicated, the family serves as a nursery for true human beings, implying a profound spiritual purpose. This transforms the marriage into a shared path of ubudiyyah, or servitude to God. Let's have a look at this idea of shared servitude, the path of spiritual partnership. Imam Khamenei articulates this beautifully. He says, by entering the state of marriage, we renew our own vows towards God and our religious obligations. We start a family with God in mind. That is why Islam has specified certain acts of worship for every Muslim to perform on their marriage night, including supplications and prayer. Let's now look at the sacred trust beyond secular conceptions. This vision starkly contrasts with secular, transactional, or purely hedonistic views of relationships, which inevitably neglect the spiritual core and societal significance of this divine institution. Marriage in Islam stands as a divine trust, demanding pure intentions, unwavering commitment, and a constant, conscious awareness of God's presence within the heart of the relationship. Let's now have our first lesson for the present, reorienting our intentions. So understanding marriage as a sacred covenant requires a fundamental shift in our internal perspective. We must approach it not primarily as a quest for personal happiness or worldly comfort, but rather as an ordained path towards spiritual completion and the fulfillment of a divine command. The intention or niyyah behind seeking marriage needs purification. Is the aim to build a God-centric home? To find a partner who aids in matters of faith? To raise righteous children who will serve God? To strengthen the fabric of the community? This involves looking beyond the fleeting notions of romance often presented by popular culture and instead embrace the profound, divinely rooted concepts of mawadda, which is committed affection, and rahma, which is active compassion, as the pillars of this relationship. Recognizing these as gifts from God necessitates continuous effort in nurturing them through gratitude, patience, and righteous conduct. Let's now have a look at our first call to clarify, from contract to covenant. We must ask ourselves and clarify for those around us, what truly elevates a marriage from a mere social or legal contract to a sacred covenant blessed by God? It is the conscious and continuous centering of God within the relationship. It is the recognizing of His signs or ayat in the tranquility, affection, and mercy we experience with our spouses. How do mawadda and rahma manifest practically in our daily lives, distinguishing this divine model from lesser forms of partnership? They appear through consistent mutual respect, especially during disagreements, through the practice of forgiveness, even when difficult, through unwavering patience through hardship, through expressing sincere gratitude for the spouse's presence and efforts, through prioritizing their spiritual well-being alongside their worldly comfort, and through making significant life decisions together, always keeping God's pleasure as the ultimate compass. Let us clarify within our families and communities that the success of a marriage in the truest sense is measured not by its accumulated wealth or social recognition, but by the depth of sakina or tranquility that it fosters, and the degree to which it brings both partners ever closer to God, enabling them to better fulfill their sacred purpose as His devoted servants. Please give me a salawat, and we move to the second point, which is spousal selection, choosing faith and character over culture.
اللهم صل
اللهم
على
صل على
محمد
محمد
وآل
وآل محمد وعجل
وعجل فرجهم.
So once we understand marriage as a sacred covenant centered on God, the next critical step is selecting the partner with whom we will undertake this journey. Islam provides clear guidance, elevating spiritual and ethical qualities far above the superficial or tribalistic criteria that often dominate cultural practices. Let's have a look at the essential criteria, faith and character above all. The primary considerations must be deen, or faith, religion, their way of life, and akhlaq, which is their character and morality. Imam Khamenei emphasizes that while worldly attributes like education, wealth, and appearance are naturally attractive, they are not the necessary ingredients for a happy or lasting marriage. True marital happiness stems from partnership with someone possessing goodness, purity, honor, and crucially, religiosity and sound character. Imam Khamenei says, what makes someone happy in their marriage is being with a partner who has aptitude, goodness, religion, purity, and honor. These are the ingredients for a lasting and happy marriage. And of course, the references are all in the write-up. Deen in this context is not merely nominal affiliation, meaning someone says that I am a Muslim. No. Rather, it is a conscious commitment to God, adherence to His instructions and commands, and a continuous effort towards spiritual growth and developing one's own taqwa or God awareness, God consciousness. Akhlaq refers to ingrained moral character. Qualities like patience, forbearance, steadfastness, sabr, kindness, lutf, trustworthiness, amanah, truthfulness, sidq, responsibility, and good conduct, husn al-khulq. We seek a partner who not only possesses these qualities, but actively aids us in our own spiritual journey, helping us fulfill the purpose of protecting our faith through marriage. Let's now look at challenging culture, the danger of worldly filters. The Islamic framework directly challenges many prevalent cultural filters that prioritize worldly considerations. Imam Khamenei strongly critiques choosing a spouse based primarily on wealth or beauty, noting that these are fleeting qualities susceptible to change and loss. Relying on them can lead to disappointment, whereas prioritizing faith often brings worldly blessings along with it. Imam Khamenei says, there is a narration that says that if someone marries a spouse because of their wealth or beauty, it is possible for God to take these away. But the tradition also says that if you choose your spouse based on his or her religious devotion, you will be given wealth and beauty as well. These are important things for everyone to reflect on. Let's now look at this notion of divine beauty, love through God's eyes. Imam Khamenei goes on to explain that the beauty which God grants is not a physical transformation, but rather stems from the love planted within the heart, making the spouse appear beautiful in the eyes of the one who loves them for his sake. Imam Khamenei says, then all of a sudden I realized what it is that creates beauty. It is love. When God puts love in someone's heart, even the ugliest face is made beautiful to his eyes. The point is that when God plants the seed of love in a person, beauty accompanies it. This is because beauty is in the eyes and heart of the beholder. Let's now look at what we call Jahili remnants, status and lineage obsessions. Similarly, prioritizing status, family name, specific ethnicities or adhering to rigid caste-like systems represents a departure from Islamic principles. Imam Khamenei notes that these echo the misguided criteria prevalent before Islam in what we call the days of Jahiliyyah, days of ignorance. Imam Khamenei says, Islam has envisioned a particular set of criteria for choosing a spouse, which can be contrasted to a set of mindless or jahili criteria, which emphasizes reputation, title, wealth, profession, etc. Let's now look at a very difficult subject, the Sayyid question, dismantling lineage exclusivity. Among these misguided, jahili-rooted notions is the insistence found in some communities on marrying only within a specific lineage, such as the practice of restricting marriage exclusively between Sayyids, Sayyids being descendants of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him and his family. This practice has no basis in authentic Islamic teachings. The Quran establishes the sole criterion for nobility in the sight of Allah as taqwa, God consciousness, God awareness. In the Quran, Surah Al-Hujurat, the chapter of the chambers, 49th chapter of the Quran, verse number 13, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "Indeed, the most noble of you in the sight of God is the most righteous of you." This verse dismantles any claim to inherent superiority based on lineage, based on tribe, based on race. The measure of true worth is piety and character. And there is historical proof for this. Let's look at the marriages of the Imams themselves. Furthermore, the Sunnah of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, and the practice of the Imams of Ahl al-Bayt, peace and blessings be upon them all, refute such exclusivity. The Imams frequently married noble women who were not Sayyids, or even from Banu Hashim as a clan or a tribe. For instance, the revered mother of Imam Sajjad, peace and blessings be upon him, Sayyida Shahrbanu, was a princess from Iran, from Persia. And the esteemed mother of Imam al-Rida, peace and blessings be upon him, Sayyida Najma Khatun, was from North Africa. Their choice underscored that piety, virtue, and character transcend lineage. And let's have a look at a scholarly consensus. Faith as true compatibility. Contemporary scholars strongly affirm this principle, emphasizing faith as the essential element of compatibility or kufu. Ayatollah Sistani, may God protect him, clarifies the Islamic position on compatibility. He says, compatibility is a condition for the validity of marriage in the sense that it is not permissible to marry a believing woman to a non-believer, but it is not a condition beyond that. And of course, the reference is in the writer. The clear implication is that once faith or iman is established, preventing a marriage solely based on lineage, like Sayyid versus non-Sayyid, is actually impermissible. While social and cultural compatibility can aid marital harmony, it cannot become a rigid barrier overriding the fundamental compatibility of faith. Ayatollah Sistani again explicitly addresses the scenario where a guardian objects solely based on lineage. He says, the question is this: is it permissible for the father, despite the presence of a suitable match according to the Sharia, someone who is committed, religious, believing young man whom the daughter desires, is it permissible for the father to reject him because he is not a Sayyid or not an Arab or for any other non-Shara'i reason? The answer, said Sistani gives, is very clear. It is not permissible for him to do that. If the young man's faith and character are agreeable to the daughter, then he is her match according to Sharia. Similarly, in lineage, social standing and other matters that are not considered in faith and character, they are not to be taken into account. This ruling explicitly forbids a guardian from rejecting a suitable match based on non-Shari'i reasons like lineage, confirming that faith and character are the determining factors for compatibility, and preventing a marriage solely based on lineage or other such reasons is completely impermissible. Let's have a look at modern guidance, Al-Maraja on Islamic standards. Imam Khomeini, may God rest his pure soul, similarly addressed the primacy of Islamic criteria over cultural norms, reminding people that nobility comes from piety. Imam Khomeini has said, marriage is a good matter that has been greatly emphasized in Islam, but the selection of a spouse is a fundamental basis for this good matter, in which Islamic criteria must be observed. The criterion in Islam is piety, chastity, and righteousness, not beauty, wealth, or lineage. Imam Khamenei echoes this sentiment, condemning inherited cultural habits that contradict Islamic teachings. He says, these incorrect tribal customs are jahili, ignorant customs. Ignorant Muslims relying on jahili, ignorant traditions and customs perform actions that have no connection to Islam and its luminous rulings. These are contrary to the clear Sharia. And of course, all the references for these are in the write-up. People are welcome to review them. Insisting on Sayyid-only marriages often stems from cultural habits rooted in pre-Islamic tribal pride or asabiyya. It is a misunderstanding of the respect due to the Prophet's lineage, peace and blessings be upon him and his family. This respect translates to ethical treatment and love, not marital exclusivity or social stratification. Psychologically, such rigid rules can foster arrogance in one group and feelings of inferiority in another, creating unnecessary barriers to lawful marriage, leading to delays or unsuitable matches, and tragically divide the Muslim community based on a criteria God himself has abolished. It reflects a clinging to worldly notions of status rather than embracing the universal brotherhood and sisterhood of faith that Islam champions. Let's now look at a story from the time of Prophet, the story of Juwaybir. The beautiful example of Juwaybir, a companion less endowed with worldly means, whom the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, encouraged to seek marriage with the daughter of a noble and wealthy family, based solely on his faith, illustrates this principle powerfully. Imam Khamenei quotes it. He says, the Prophet told Juwaybir, to ask for the hand of the beautiful daughter of one of the richest and noblest families. What was this girl thinking? In her mind, he was a Muslim man and she was a Muslim woman, and that was sufficient for them to be a match. A Muslim is a Muslim's compeer, and a believer is a believer's compeer. This is the Islamic criteria for marriage. The true measure of compatibility in Islam is faith. There is a famous hadith. The believer is the equal of the believer woman, and the Muslim is the equal of the Muslim woman. Let's now look at a very important point, which is free will, consent as a sacred prerequisite. Crucially, the individual's consent is an absolute prerequisite for a valid Islamic marriage. Any form of coercion, whether overt or subtle, renders the marriage void from a Shari'i perspective. Parental guidance and blessings are, of course, highly encouraged, but they do not possess the right to compel or forbid a marriage against the individual's free will, provided the choice aligns with Islamic principles. Imam Khamenei clearly states, God has respected the will of men and women in all matters, including marriage. Based on this, forcing girls to marry men is forbidden according to Islam, and it is not permissible without the girl's consent. He further condemns specific un-Islamic cultural practices that interfere with free choice, such as when a cousin might claim undue rights over a girl's marriage decision, deeming such interference contrary to clear religious law. Imam Khamenei says, for example, from what I know among some tribes, the paternal cousin of any girl has the right to express an opinion regarding that girl's marriage. This is wrong. Islam does not give such permission to anyone. If someone, by virtue of being a girl's paternal cousin, gives himself the right to forbid her from marrying someone else and says, since you did not marry me, I will not permit you to marry this cousin and anyone who helps him. This cousin and anyone who helps him has committed a forbidden act contrary to the Sharia. These are contrary to the clear Sharia. These are very important points. You then have the concept of cousin marriage between permissibility and pressure. Regarding this subject of cousin marriages, while permissible, according to Islamic jurisprudence, we must differentiate permissibility from obligation or even preference. Cultural pressures often create an expectation, particularly for first or second cousins, which can overshadow genuine compatibility or personal choice. Furthermore, contemporary awareness regarding potential genetic health risks associated with close relative marriages should be considered responsibly alongside the fiqh ruling, without making the permissible forbidden, but ensuring choices are informed and free from undue pressure. Let's now come on to our next lesson for the present, evaluating beyond the surface. Practically evaluating deen and akhlaq requires looking beyond superficial appearances or claims. It involves observing consistency in religious practice, prayer, modesty, honesty, and so on. It involves looking at interactions with the family, especially parents, behavior under pressure, trustworthiness in dealings, and the nature of their friendships. Seeking counsel from truly wise and pious individuals who know the person, and performing diligent investigation, which we call tahqiq, without resorting to spying or gossip, are essential steps. We must cultivate the courage, grounded in faith, to uphold Islamic criteria, even when faced with conflicting family or cultural expectations. Communicating respectfully but firmly why deen and akhlaq are non-negotiable priorities. Trust in God's plan is paramount when facing pressure to compromise on these core principles. Let's look at our call to clarify for this section, upholding Islamic standards. So we must ask ourselves and clarify within our communities, how can we practically assess genuine deen and akhlaq in a potential spouse, moving beyond outward appearances or family reputation? What are the observable signs of true piety or taqwa, good character, husnul khulq, and trustworthiness? Let us clarify unequivocally the absolute prohibition of forced marriages in Islam and the invalidity of any union lacking free and informed consent. We must also clarify that while respecting parents is crucial, their preferences cannot override clear Islamic principles regarding spousal selection criteria or the necessity of consent. Educate families on the difference between cultural traditions and authentic Islamic teachings regarding who constitutes a suitable match, emphasizing that faith and character are the true measures of compatibility and the foundation for a blessed union. Please give me a salawat, and we then move on to the next point, which is mahran jahziyah, simplicity as sunnah.
اللهم صل
So, having established faith and character as the primary criteria for selecting a spouse, Islam guides us further by emphasizing simplicity and moderation in the material aspects of establishing the marriage, specifically concerning the mahriyah, or the dowry given by the groom to the bride, and the jahziyah, which is not an Islamic point, but it's a very cultural thing. It is the marriage trousseau or gift often provided by the bride's family. Let's firstly look at the perfect model, so the Fatimah Zahra and Imam Ali's union. This emphasis on simplicity is not merely a suggestion, but a deeply rooted sunnah, exemplified by the most blessed union in history, that of Sayyidah Fatimah Zahra and Imam Ali. Peace and blessings be upon them both. Their marriage serves as the ultimate paragon. Despite Sayyidah Fatimah Zahra being the cherished daughter of Prophet Muhammad and Imam Ali being the foremost companion, their union was marked by profound humility in its material aspects. Imam Khamenei reminds us of this essential lesson. He says, "Do we not say that her, Fatimiyyah Zahra's, marriage gift included items that would bring tears to one's eyes upon hearing of them? Do we not say that this exalted lady placed no value on this world and its adornments?" Let's have a look at material humility, the contents of a blessed beginning. The mahriyah, or dowry, agreed between Imam Ali and Sayyidah Fatimah Zahra was known as the mahr sunnah, a modest amount derived from the sale of Imam Ali's shield, and the jaziyah, or gift, consisted of only the most basic necessities for starting a household. Items like a reed mat, bedding filled with palm fiber, a water skin, and some grinding stones. This was not due to poverty, but rather it was a conscious choice by the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, to establish a blessed precedent, a sunnah, demonstrating that the sanctity and success of marriage are independent of material wealth. Let's now look at the symbolic purpose, setting the standard for everyone. Imam Khamenei points out that this simplicity had a very important symbolic purpose. He says, "The fact that such simplicity was observed in the marriage gift of Sayyidah Fatimah Zahra, this had a symbolic aspect so that it might serve as a foundation and basis among the people for acting upon it, preventing them from falling into the problems that arise from excess." And on that note, let's have a look at the mahar problem, from a sacred gift to a business transaction. Islam, therefore, fundamentally critiques the practice of demanding excessive mahriyah. Imam Khamenei identifies this as a remnant of pre-Islamic ignorance, or jahiliyyah, a practice that devalues the human and spiritual essence of marriage, reducing it to a mere business transaction. Setting an exorbitant mahriyah, Imam Khamenei argues, is a form of disrespect to the woman, treating her like merchandise whose value can be quantified in monetary terms, rather than being a cherished human being entering a sacred partnership. Imam Khamenei says, "Those who assume that setting their daughter's dowry high is a form of respect to her are wrong as well. In fact, this is a form of disrespect because they are reducing the commodity in this human transaction to the level of mere merchandise." And then there's the question of false security. Why a high mahriyah does not protect a marriage. Furthermore, many people have this notion that a high mahriyah secures the marriage or prevents divorce. This is a fallacy. Imam Khamenei asserts that stability comes not from financial deterrence, but from ethical conduct and adherence to Islamic principles. He says, "No dowry, no matter how high, can prevent a divorce. What prevents a divorce are one's morals and actions, as well as abiding by the teachings of Islam." Let's now have a look at societal harms, barriers to marriage, and resentment. The issue of excessive mahr creates significant societal problems, making marriage inaccessible for many young people and fostering resentment. Imam Khamenei's preference for advising a mahriyah of around 14 gold coins, maybe in Western terms, you're looking at something around £500 or $500, something like this, is explicitly stated as symbolic, aiming to prioritize the spiritual over the material aspect of a marriage. And now you have the jahaziyah trap, competition and material display. Similarly, Islam critiques extravagance or israf and competition in jahaziyah, which is the marriage trousseau or the gift. While providing necessities is encouraged, of course, turning it into a display of wealth, burdening the bride's family beyond their means, and engaging in ostentatious competition, these are condemned. Such practices inject materialism, potential debt, and social pressure into what should be a blessed beginning, often causing long-term dissatisfaction and huge feelings of inadequacy. Imam Khamenei warns against this contest. He says, "Do not enslave yourselves to formalities. Do not fall into the trap of material competition in life's affairs. No one becomes happy or successful in this competition." Let's have a look at true necessity, contentment over competition. The focus should be on providing what is genuinely needed to start a life together, fostering contentment, qana'ah, rather than endless acquisition. Let's have a look at our next lesson for the present, embracing simplicity as strength. Living the sunnah of simplicity in mahriyah, in jahaziyah, requires real concerted, conscious effort against very strong cultural ties. It means prioritizing the partner's faith and character far above the monetary value attached to the marriage contract. For grooms and their families, it involves offering a mahriyah that is reasonable, sincere, and within one's means, understanding it as a symbol of commitment, not a price tag. For brides and families, it means valuing the groom's piety and potential over his immediate financial capacity, and focusing the jahaziyah on practical necessities rather than huge extravagant displays. Embracing simplicity is not a sign of weakness or a lack of worth, but rather it is a sign of spiritual strength, trust in God's provision, and a commitment to building the marriage on a foundation deeper than material possessions. It frees the couple and their families from unnecessary debt, stress, and social comparison, allowing them to focus on cultivating love and understanding and moving collectively towards God. Let's have a look at our call to clarify for this section, reviving the prophetic standard. Now we must ask ourselves and clarify within our own communities, why did the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, and Sayyidah Fatimah Zahra establish such a profound example of simplicity in matters of mahriyah and jahaziyah? It was to teach us that the true value and blessing of marriage lie in faith, mutual respect, and reliance on God, not in material wealth or social competition. How can families today collectively challenge and push back against this deeply ingrained cultural pressure for excessive mahriyah and extravagant jahaziyah? By educating each other on the Islamic perspective, celebrating simple weddings, refusing to participate in ostentatious displays, and supporting young couples who choose the path of moderation. Let us clarify that insisting on a high mahriyah disrespects the woman by commoditizing her, and demanding lavish jahaziyah burdens families unnecessarily. We must revive the prophetic standard, clarifying that a marriage's true honor and potential for success are found in piety, in taqwa, in love, mawadda, in mercy, rahmah, and in contentment, qana'ah, not in gold coins or overflowing gifts. Please give me a salawat and we move to the next point, which is societal pressures and media resisting distortions.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
So beyond clarifying the divine purpose and proper criteria for marriage, we must also actively resist the significant distortions and pressures that contemporary society imposes often hindering or poisoning the path towards establishing a blessed union. Let's have a look at the sources of corruption: culture, media, and materialism. These distortions stem from various sources, including misguided cultural expectations, pervasive media influences, and a dominant materialistic worldview. Firstly, financial barriers, when money blocks marriage. One major distortion is the insistence on unrealistic financial prerequisites before marriage. Many families and individuals feel marriage is impossible without first securing a high-paying job, owning a home, or possessing significant savings. Imam Khamenei identified this as a barrier often raised unnecessarily. He says, "When young people are approached regarding marriage, they say, 'But what will we do about an income and a home?' And these have always been the barriers that stand in the way of our fundamental life choices." Divine guarantee, trust in God's provision. This anxiety, while understandable in challenging economic times, often overshadows trust in God's provision or rizq. The Holy Quran directly addresses this concern, offering a divine guarantee. In Quran, in Surah An-Nur, the chapter of the light, 24th chapter of the Quran, verse number 32, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Marry the unwed amongst you, and the righteous amongst your male and female slaves. If they are poor, God will enrich them out of His grace, and God is all bounteous, all knowing." Imam Khamenei reinforces this divine promise, urging reliance on God rather than succumbing to material fears that delay or prevent marriage. While responsible planning is necessary, of course, making excessive financial security a non-negotiable prerequisite contradicts the spirit of tawakkul, reliance on God, and overlooks the blessing or barakah that often accompany marriage. Let's now look at the media assault, the cultural onslaught. A second source of distortion is media influence. Global media, from Hollywood and Bollywood films to social media trends and pervasive advertising, relentlessly promotes unrealistic and often un-Islamic ideals of romance, intimacy, beauty, and marital roles. Imam Khamenei warns strongly against the cultural onslaught, what we call tahajjum farhangi, driven by Western materialism and hedonism, which aims to reshape desires and values. Imam Khamenei says, "Western culture is not just airplanes and means of comfort and means of speed and ease. These are the appearances of Western culture which are not decisive. The inner reality of Western culture consists of the same materialistic, lustful, sinful, identity-erasing, anti-spiritual, and spirituality-hating lifestyle." And of course, the references are in the write-up. Let's now look at false expectations, passion over permanence. This culture is often propagated through entertainment. This culture that is often propagated through entertainment normalizes dissatisfaction, infidelity, consumerism, and superficial relationships based on fleeting passion rather than enduring mawadda and rahmah. This creates expectations that real life cannot fulfill, leading to disappointment and instability. Now we look at the digital poison, the pornography crisis. Particularly damaging is the normalization and easy accessibility of pornography, which severely distorts views of intimacy, objectifies individuals, especially women, fosters addiction, and demonstratively damages the capacity for healthy, loving relationships within a marriage. Its corrosive effects on the soul and the sacred bond between spouses cannot be overstated. Let's now look at contradictory demands, the modern Muslim dilemma. Furthermore, these external pressures often create contradictory demands, particularly on Muslim women, urging them to conform to Western beauty standards while simultaneously expecting traditional roles, or pushing them towards careerism at the expense of family well-being. The pervasive consumer culture relentlessly marketed, also infiltrates the approach to marriage, turning it into an opportunity for consumption and display rather than spiritual union. Let's now look at our lessons for the present for this section: cultivating resilience and critical awareness. Resisting these distortions requires conscious effort and spiritual fortification. We must cultivate critical media literacy, learn to identify and critique the unrealistic and often harmful messages embedded in entertainment and advertising regarding relationships, beauty, and success. Build self-worth based on Islamic values, piety, knowledge, character, service, rather than external validation through appearance or possessions. This is crucial. For those facing financial anxieties about marriage, strengthen reliance on God, tawakkul, alongside making reasonable efforts. This is key. Recalling the Quranic principle of rizq can alleviate undue fear. Actively seeking spiritual, mental, and emotional preparation for marriage, focusing on understanding rights, responsibilities, and communication skills is far more valuable than simply accumulating wealth. Tackling issues like pornography addiction requires acknowledging the problem, seeking help, spiritually and potentially therapeutic, and understanding its profound incompatibility with a healthy marital life. Finally, open communication within families about realistic Islamic expectations versus harmful cultural or media-driven pressures is also essential. Let's now look at our call to clarify for this section: shielding the sacred from the profane. We must ask ourselves and clarify for our communities, how do the subtle and not so subtle messages from global media shape our expectations of marriage, intimacy, and spousal roles? We need to expose the destructive impact of pornography and clarify its status as a grave sin that erodes the foundations of love and trust. Let us clarify the Islamic perspective on rizq, that God facilitates sustenance for those who strive for those who strive towards Him and place their trust in Him, especially when undertaking a recommended act like marriage, a highly recommended act like marriage. How can we actively uphold Islamic values of modesty, contentment, and prioritizing the spiritual against the relentless onslaught of consumerist pressures that seek to commodify even sacred relationships and even sacred concepts? We must clarify that true readiness for marriage lies primarily in spiritual and ethical maturity, not merely financial accumulation, and we must resist the cultural trends that unduly burden young people and delay the formation of blessed families. Please give me a salawat, and we move to the next point, which is addressing delay, the wisdom of timely marriage.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
So having considered the sacred nature of marriage, the criteria for choosing a partner, the importance of simplicity, and the need to resist societal distortions, we now turn to the question of timing. Sacred urgency in marriage as faith completion. Islam encourages marriage not merely as a social milestone, but as a means of completing faith and finding tranquility. Significantly, it advises against unnecessary delay once the genuine need for marriage arises. Let's have a look at a prophetic warning: the problem of unnecessary delay. The Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, regarded remaining unmarried when one feels the need as undesirable. Imam Khamenei quotes Prophet Muhammad saying, "The worst of you are the uzab among you." Imam Khamenei explains that the uzab refers to those, male or female, who feel the need to marry but have not done so. Protecting faith: why delay causes harm. Marriage is presented as a protection for faith. fulfilling innate human needs within a sacred framework. Delaying marriage without a valid reason, particularly when influenced by Western cultural norms, prioritizing extended youth indulgence or excessive career focus before settling down, is viewed as contrary to human nature, as in the fitrah and well-being. Imam Khamenei says, putting off marriage until the onset of one's middle age is common practice in Western culture. But like most other practices prevalent there, it is wrong. It is against man's fitrah, his God-given innate disposition. It runs counter to the general welfare of mankind, and it actually stems from libertinism and promiscuity. And of course, the references are all the write-up. Let's look at a balanced approach, preparation without procrastination. While responsible preparation, such as completing essential education or achieving a basic level of stability, is understandable, indefinite postponement driven by fear, materialism, or the pursuit of an exclusive perfect time can lead to spiritual and social harm. It can expose individuals to temptations and deprive them of the tranquility or sakina and mutual support marriage provides. Now we're going to touch upon a sensitive subject, understanding temporary marriage. Furthermore, in the context of delaying or avoiding the responsibilities of permanent marriage, we must address a concerning trend regarding temporary marriage, which is known as mut'ah or nikah munqati. This requires careful clarification, because while temporary marriage is recognized as permissible within Shia jurisprudence based on interpretations of Quranic verses and numerous traditions from Ahl al-Bayt, peace and blessings be upon them all, its purpose, application, and potential for misuse demand a thorough understanding grounded in wisdom, hikmah, and piety, taqwa. So first of all, what is temporary marriage? What is mut'ah? Mut'ah is a distinct form of marriage contract or aqd with a specific mandatory set of conditions. Number one, the offer and acceptance, clear verbal agreement between the man and the woman. Number two, specified duration, muddah. The time period must be explicitly stated, ranging from many hours to many years. If no duration is mentioned, the contract defaults to a permanent marriage. Number three, specified dowry, mahriyah. A pre-agreed mahriyah or dowry must be stipulated. Upon the contract's expiry or the gifting of the remaining duration by the husband, the marriage dissolves without requiring a formal divorce. Crucially, there is the waiting period, the iddah, an obligatory waiting period, typically 2 menstrual cycles or 45 days if they're absent, must be observed by the woman after separation before she can marry again. This ensures clarity of lineage. And the next point, legitimacy of children. Any children resulting from mut'ah are fully legitimate, inherit from both parents, bear the father's name, and the father is responsible for their maintenance, exactly like children from a permanent marriage. The permissibility itself is rooted in Quranic interpretation and prophetic tradition, as understood within the Shia school. The verse often cited is Quran, Surah An-Nisa, the chapter of the women, 4th chapter of the Quran, verse 24, where Allah says, "So for whatever you have benefited from them, give them their due compensation as an obligation." Now, Shia exegesis and numerous traditions from the Imams, peace and blessings be upon them all, interpret this istama'tum here as referring specifically to the contract of temporary marriage. Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, peace and blessings be upon him, affirmed its basis in the Quran and Sunnah. He said, and this is quoted by the famous companion Abu Basir. So from Abu Basir, who said, I asked Abu Ja'far, Imam al-Baqir, peace be upon him, about mut'ah. He said, it was revealed in the Quran. So for whatever you have benefited from them, give them their due compensation as an obligation. And there is no blame upon you for what you mutually agree to do after the obligation. And the reference for this is in the write-up, and it's a hadith from Imam Baqir, not Imam Sadiq. Let's now look at legitimate context and wisdom, hikmah. The wisdom or hikmah frequently cited for the legislation of mut'ah is its role as a safety valve, providing a lawful avenue to fulfill natural human needs, physical and emotional, and prevent individuals from falling into the grave sin of fornication or zina. In specific circumstances where permanent marriage is genuinely impractical or impossible. The martyr Ayatollah Murtada Mutahhari, may God rest his pure soul, eloquently explains this protective function, arguing against its total prohibition, which could lead to greater societal harm. Shaykh Mutahhari says, Islam, by permitting mut'ah, did not intend to accept casual relationships under another name and color, but rather intended to prevent it. Nature has placed sexual need in human existence. If there is no legitimate way to satisfy it, humanity will satiate it through illegitimate means. And the reference is, of course, in the write-up. Such legitimate circumstances might include extended travel, studying abroad far from one's spouse, situations involving widows or divorcees for whom immediate permanent marriage is difficult or impossible, or individuals with particular health and social conditions temporarily preventing a permanent commitment. It serves as a shield against illicit relationships, as suggested by the tradition attributed to Imam Ali, peace and blessings be upon him, where Imam Sadiq has said, indeed Imam Ali said, were it not for what the son of Khattab preceded me with, that is the prohibition of mut'ah, because Umar ibn Khattab was the one who prohibited mut'ah, and he had his reasons. Imam Ali continues and says, no one would commit fornication except a wretched person. Let's now look at a critique of contemporary misuse. And this is very important because this is what's happening today. Despite its valid foundation and specific purpose, there is significant concern regarding the misuse and abuse of mut'ah in contemporary society. It is sometimes adopted, particularly by some individuals, not out of genuine need or as a preventative measure against sin, but as a mechanism for casual, recreational, sexual encounters, essentially using it as an Islamic loophole to bypass the commitment, responsibility, and emotional investment inherent in building stable relationships or families. This approach fundamentally distorts the spirit and intent of the ruling. Using mut'ah repeatedly without legitimate need, without due consideration for the emotional and social consequences, especially for the woman, and primarily as a substitute for the effort required to establish a permanent marriage, gravely undermines the overarching Islamic emphasis on chastity, on mutual respect, on responsibility, and the sanctity of intimate relationships. While Imam Khamenei, like other maraji', uphold the established fiqh ruling on the permissibility of mut'ah, his overwhelming public emphasis is on promoting, facilitating, and strengthening permanent marriage as the cornerstone of a healthy society. His consistent calls for timely permanent marriages, simplifying its requirements and fostering mawadda and rahmah, serve as an implicit but strong caution against any trend or practice, including the frivolous misuse of temporary arrangements that could potentially weaken this primary institution. Two scholars, Ahmadi and Nodehi, in their paper analyzing the viewpoint of Imam Khamenei on marriage and family, note the need for a correct presentation, tarh sahih, of temporary marriage within the framework of his overall guidance, pointing directly towards addressing these very distortions. They say the necessity of correct presentation of contemporary marriage. This misuse risks fostering detachment, objectification, reducing the partner and relationship purely to temporary physical gratification and significant emotional harm to both, but particularly for women who might enter such arrangements seeking genuine connection or stability only to find themselves easily discarded. It directly contradicts the cultivation of deep mawadda and enduring rahmah that God placed as his signs within true marital bonds. Ayatollah Misbah Yazdi, may God rest his pure soul, often warned against hedonistic approaches to life that prioritize fleeting pleasure over long-term spiritual growth and responsibility, a critique applicable to the misuse of mut'ah. He emphasizes that worldly pleasures should serve, not supplant, our ultimate spiritual purpose, saying, worldly pleasures are all preliminary steps towards that ultimate and lasting pleasure of the hereafter. If a person behaves in such a way as to reach their ultimate pleasure, they have also utilized these preliminary pleasures to the necessary extent and in the direction of reaching that goal. But if they make these worldly pleasures the goal itself and become heedless of the ultimate goal, they have incurred a huge loss. And again, the references are all in the write-up. Let's also make a very important clarification, distinguishing mut'ah from prostitution, because this is what some people sometimes try and do. They try and equate mut'ah with prostitution. It is imperative as an act of tabyin, clarification, to firmly reject the false and deeply offensive equivalence sometimes drawn between mut'ah and prostitution, often by those hostile to Islam, specifically Shia Islam, or ignorant of its rulings. They are fundamentally different in nature, condition, and consequences. Mut'ah is a marriage contract, an act. It establishes a legal marital status recognized by Sharia, requiring offer, acceptance, mahar, and duration. Prostitution, on the other hand, is a commercial transaction, mu'amala, for sexual access. It is devoid of any marital status or any religious sanction. Secondly, you have the mandatory waiting period, the iddah. Mut'ah requires an iddah for the woman, ensuring lineage clarity and respecting her well-being. Prostitution has no iddah. Legitimacy of children. Children from mut'ah are legitimate with full rights, inheritance, maintenance, and name. Prostitution does not confer legitimacy or rights upon potential offspring. The nature of the payment. The mahriyya in mut'ah is a gift within a marriage contract. It is not a price for services rendered. And the purpose. While physical relations are permitted, the legitimate wisdom behind mut'ah includes preventing sin, companionship, and fulfilling needs where permanent marriage is unfeasible. Prostitution's sole purpose is the commercial exchange of sexual services. Therefore, despite this condemnable reality of misuse, the institution of mut'ah itself, when applied according to its stringent conditions and underlying spirit of preventing greater harm, cannot be honestly equated or even compared with prostitution. Misuse by individuals does not invalidate the ruling itself, just as misuse of permanent marriage, such as by way of domestic abuse and other things, does not invalidate permanent marriage. And now a conclusion on mut'ah. Understanding the divine wisdom or hikmah, an overarching purpose behind Islamic rulings, is essential. Focusing solely on surface level permissibility without considering the ethical context, the potential harms of misuse, and the higher objectives of Sharia, like preserving family stability, promoting chastity, ensuring mutual respect, and protecting lineage, can lead one dangerously astray. The misuse of mut'ah for casual encounters represents such a deviation, potentially harming individuals and undermining societal values, not to mention the psychological harm it can do to both the man and the woman. permanent marriage remains the foundational, highly encouraged and ideal institution for building families, for raising children, and achieving that profound sakina, mawadda, and rahmah that form the bedrock of a stable and virtuous society within Islam. Temporary marriage serves a very specific, very limited role, and approaching it requires heightened taqwa, God awareness, heightened responsibility, and a clear understanding of its intended purpose as a shield against sin, not a tool for indulgence. Let's have a look at our lessons for the present from this point: discerning need, responsibility, and resisting procrastination. So recognizing the need for marriage involves acknowledging physical, emotional, and spiritual dimensions. We must differentiate responsible planning from procrastination driven by fear or materialism. Embracing timely permanent marriage reflects trust in God's plan and opens doors to his blessing. We must understand the distinct purposes of permanent and temporary marriage. Approaching mut'ah requires serious consideration of genuine need, not mere desire, potential consequences, and ensuring it aligns with taqwa and with hikmah. It should never be seen as an easy substitute for the commitment required by permanent marriage, nor used in a way that leads to objectification, emotional harm, or the weakening of the family institution. Responsibility for any potential children and adherence to all conditions, including the iddah, are entirely non-negotiable. Let's now have our call to clarify for this section: purpose, permissibility, and the primacy of family. We need to ask ourselves and clarify for our youth and our communities: what constitutes a genuine need for marriage according to Islamic understanding, encompassing physical, emotional, and spiritual dimensions? How can we differentiate prudent preparation from harmful delays rooted in fear, materialism, or cultural inertia? Let us clarify the profound spiritual and societal benefits of timely permanent marriage as encouraged by the Sunnah. Furthermore, as an act of crucial tabyin or clarification, we must clarify the correct understanding of temporary marriage or mut'ah, its specific conditions, its limited legitimate scope based on hikmah, wisdom, and preventing sin, and the grave impermissibility of its misuse for casual encounters, which contradicts the Islamic thought and Islamic ethics. We must firmly refute the false equation of mut'ah with prostitution, explaining the fundamental legal and ethical differences. And we must emphasize that while mut'ah is permissible under very specific conditions, permanent marriage is the foundation God desires for the family life, fostering sakina, mawadda, and rahmah. Any use of temporary marriage must be approached with the utmost of responsibility, of great piety, God awareness, taqwa, and awareness of its potential pitfalls, never allowing it to become a means to undermine the commitment to building strong, lasting families. Please give me a salawat and we move on to the conclusion.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه.
So in this first session, focused on weaving the first stitch of faith into marriage, we have journeyed through the foundational principles that elevate this union to a sacred covenant in Islam. We affirmed marriage's divine origin, centered on God and sustained by his gifts of tranquility, sakina, affection, mawadda, and mercy, rahmah. We critically examined the criteria for spousal selection, understanding that true compatibility rests upon faith and character, deen and akhlaq, rejecting the divisive and often jahili cultural obsession with lineage, wealth, or fleeting beauty, while insisting on the non-negotiable requirement of free consent. We embrace the profound wisdom in the Sunnah of simplicity, exemplified by Sayyidah Fatimah Zahra, peace and blessings be upon her, regarding the Mahriyah and the Jahaziyah, recognizing extravagance as a corrosive force. We confronted the necessity of resisting societal and media distortions, from unrealistic financial pressures and harmful portrayals of intimacy to the dangers of pornography and consumerism. Finally, we explored the wisdom of timely marriage, addressing unnecessary delays and clarifying the specific and very limited role of temporary arrangements or mut'a, in contrast to the foundational importance of permanent marriage. The synthesis of these points underscores a vital reality. Building a marriage grounded in Wilayah is an intentional act that begins long before the wedding vows. It demands a conscious alignment of our deepest intentions, our selection criteria, our material arrangements, our engagement with the surrounding culture, and our understanding of commitment with the divine blueprint. The spiritual and ethical integrity we bring to these initial stages, the care with which we weave this first stitch, profoundly shapes the resilience, purpose, and potential for blessing in the entire marital journey. This requires us to cultivate courage against cultural inertia, discipline against fleeting desires, and unwavering trust or tawakkul in God's guidance. It is a call to prioritize the sacred over the superficial, the eternal principles of faith over the transient demands of the world. Now, a call to action for this entire session. Building upon the clarifications sought throughout this session, let us translate this understanding into tangible action. We are called to, number one, purify intentions and perspectives. Engage in deep self-reflection. Why do we seek marriage? Are our motivations aligned with seeking God's pleasure, with spiritual growth and building a righteous family? Let us consciously recenter God in our understanding of marriage, moving beyond seeing it as merely a social norm or a personal comfort. Number two, uphold Islamic criteria in selection. Actively prioritize deen and akhlaq when considering a potential spouse, for ourselves or when advising others. Perform diligent and ethical investigation, what we call tahqiq, focused on these core qualities. Have the courage to respectfully resist family or cultural pressures that demand compromising these essential Islamic standards for worldly considerations like lineage or wealth. Number three, champion simplicity. Advocate for and practice moderation in Mahriyah and Jahaziyah. Reject the culture of competition and extravagance in wedding celebrations. Educate families on the barakah, on the blessing found in following the sunnah of simplicity, freeing couples to begin their lives without undue financial burden or social pressure. Number four, develop critical resistance. Cultivate media literacy to identify and reject harmful, unrealistic portrayals of love, of intimacy, and of marriage. Actively shield ourselves and our families from corrosive influences like pornography, seeking help if necessary. Foster contentment, qana'ah, against consumerist pressures that seek to define marital success through material possessions. And number five, promote timely and informed marriage. Encourage marriage when the genuine need arises, countering fear-based delays rooted in materialism. Facilitate responsible preparation that focuses on spiritual and emotional maturity alongside the practicalities. Engage in clear tabyin or clarification regarding the distinct roles and responsibilities of permanent marriage versus the very specific, limited scope of temporary marriage, firmly rejecting its misuse for casual relationships and upholding the sanctity of committed family life. By actively engaging in these steps, reflection, education, and preparation, we move towards embodying the principles discussed, striving to build homes founded on Wilayah, homes that become sources of light and guidance, reflecting the legacy of Ahlul Bayt, peace and blessings be upon them all. Please give me a salawat and we move to the final point, which is a supplication eulogy for Sayyidah Fatimah Zahra.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
This supplication eulogy is titled Seeking Blessing in the First Stitch. In your name, O our Lord, O the Most High, O the Most Sublime, you are the most merciful, the most compassionate. O God, send blessings upon Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. Peace be upon you, O daughter of the Messenger of God. Peace be upon you, O wife of the Wali of God. Peace be upon you, O mother of the masters of the youth of paradise, Hassan and Hussein. Peace be upon you, O embodiment of purity, O Siddiqa, truthful, O Mardiya, O well-pleased, O radiant light from the light of God. We bear witness, O Sayyidah Fatimah Zahra, that you were the purest daughter, the most devoted wife, and the most compassionate mother. We bear witness that your blessed marriage to the commander of the faithful, Ali ibn Abi Talib, was itself a divine sign, a union forged in heaven, establishing the sacred covenant upon foundations of unparalleled faith of Iman, unwavering submission, Islam, and profound affection, mawadda, and all-encompassing mercy, rahmah. Your life together became the blueprint, the perfect manifestation of wilayah in the home. O mistress of all women, we have reflected upon the divine ordinance of marriage, its sanctity as a path to tranquility, sakina, and its potential as a fortress for faith. We see in your blessed union the perfect standard, a choice rooted not in fleeting worldly considerations, but in absolute devotion to God and His Messenger. Your mahr and jahaziyah, marked by profound simplicity, stand as an eternal lesson against the jahili inclinations towards extravagance, competition, and materialism that poison the beginnings of so many unions today. You showed us that true honor lies not in worldly possessions, but in piety or God awareness or taqwa and closeness to the divine. Therefore, O noble lady, through your exalted station near God, we implore Him, grant us the clarity to see marriage as you saw it, a sacred trust, a partnership in servitude, with God as its ever-present core. Guide our hearts and the hearts of our youth in choosing spouses, based on the enduring qualities of deen and akhlaq. Protect us from the allure of superficiality and the pressures of misguided cultural norms. Instill in us the strength and contentment to embrace simplicity in our mahar, in our jahaziyah, and our celebrations, freeing us from the shackles of extravagance and ostentation. Shield us, our families, and especially the young, from the distortion spread by those who seek to undermine faith and modesty through alluring media and corrupting ideologies. Grant us critical awareness and steadfastness. Bestow upon us the wisdom to understand the timing and purpose of marriage, facilitating unions that protect faith and build strong families, and protect us from misusing divine permissions in ways that contradict the spirit of commitment and responsibility. O God, by the right of Fatimah, her father, her husband, and her sons, and the secret entrusted within her, bless our marriages with enduring mawadda and rahmah. Guide those seeking spouses to righteous partners who will be sources of tranquility and aid in faith. Heal the rift within families, soften hardened hearts, and grant patience and wisdom to those facing trials. Protect the vulnerable, grant relief to the oppressed across the world, alleviate the suffering of the poor and the needy, and grant solace to the hearts afflicted by injustice. Grant us all the tawfiq, the ability, the success, to follow the path illuminated by Sayyidah Zahra, to establish homes filled with faith and love, and to raise generations devoted to you and the establishment of justice. And O God, strengthen us and our families through this devotion. Make our homes sanctuaries of remembrance, and readiness for your final proof, the Imam of our time. May our souls be his ransom, and may you hasten his return. Grant that we, our spouses, our children renew our pledge, ahad, and our allegiance, bay'ah, to him each morning, remaining firm on it until the day of judgment. Make us truly among his supporters, his aides, and those who defend him, and those who hasten to fulfill his command. O God, should death come for us before his return, raise us from our graves, shrouded in our devotion, ready to answer his call. Allow the light of Sayyidah Fatimah's legacy to illuminate our path towards serving her awaited son. O God, send blessings upon Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. Amen. O Lord, sustainer of the universes. Amen. O most merciful of the merciful. وآخر الدعوان الحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
We now turn to the Maqtal, the heart-wrenching account of suffering and injustice. Tonight's Maqtal is titled The Radiant Heart of the Prophet's Home and is delivered by Brother Hasnain Devji. The full text is available at www.themartyr.net.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Tonight we gather our scattered sorrows and our highest hopes beneath the shade of a single name, Fatimah. She is the quiet heart of the Prophet, the prophetic home, the pulse of truth after the messenger, the lamp that never dimmed, even when the winds of history blew harsh and cold. To speak her name is to remember what love looks like when it serves, what courage sounds like when it speaks, and what patience become when it meets the will of Allah. O Fatimah, daughter of the Prophet, mother of her father, your first embrace was mercy, and your first lesson was loyalty. As a child, you stood beside the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the streets of Mecca when mockery pressed upon him and stones sought to wound the truth. You were that small, steadfast hand that wiped dust from a noble brow. You were the warmth that soothed an aching heart. You were the tenderness that taught us that filial love is not a sentiment but a sanctuary, where the burdened can lay down their sorrows and rise again. From your mother, Our Lady Khadija alayhi salam, you inherited a different kind of wealth, the grace of service and the joy of giving. From your father, you learned that nearness to Allah is the only victory, and that roots in faith outlast all storms. When Makkah opened and power could have dazzled you, you remained as you were, simple, dignified, unbent by triumph, and untouched by grandeur. You taught us that the crown of a believer is not gold, but God consciousness. In your marriage to Ali alayhi salam, we see the meeting of truth with its defender. Yours was a home of light, not luxury, of remembrance, not rivalry, of bread shared and burdens carried together. You drew water till the rope marked your chest. You ground grain till your hands were calloused, and your fatigue reached your father. He did not send a servant, he gifted you remembrance, the tasbih of Fatimah. In that moment, you taught every home that help does come. Sometimes times not to ease the task, but to enlarge the heart. As a mother, you raised the language of sacrifice in small hands. Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein alayhi salam learned generosity not from books, but from your emptying of the pot for the hungry, your lamp burning while the house went dark so another might see. Zainab alayhi salam inherited your steadfast tongue, the courage to stand and name injustice by its name, to turn captivity into a classroom and pain into prophecy. You did not just raise children, you raised witnesses. O Fatimah, jewel of the Ahl al-Bayt, you stood beneath the cloak. You stood at the threshold of history, and when that threshold was crossed, you stood again, this time as the conscience of a wavering community. Your sermon was not anger, it was a mirror, held up to the people tempted by ease, reminding them that leadership is a trust, that the Quran is a covenant, and that prosperity without justice is merely a slower ruin. You warned us that a sword loses its shine before it loses its edge, and that the first betrayal of truth is not an act but a habit. To your wider community, you were not a shadow behind the curtain, you were the shelter behind the storm. The widow knew your door, the orphan knew your voice, and the poor knew your smile. You turned piety into bread, and remembrance into relief. In your silence there was worship, in your speech there was wisdom, and in your service there was sovereignty. And yet, when suffering came to your own door, you did not bargain with pain. You gathered your children's hands and walked to the house of sorrows, not to surrender, but to sanctify grief, not to curse fate, but to witness for the truth. You asked for nothing in return, not even the presence of those who wronged you at your burial, so that we would know that honor does not need audience, and that God suffices the hearts that prefer his gaze. O Fatimah, we come to you poor, and you teach us wealth. We come to you afraid, and you teach us courage. We come to you broken, and you teach us how a heart breaks, quietly, beautifully, before the Lord of all hearts. If we forget how to love our parents, remind us of your hand upon your father's shoulders. If we forget how to be spouses, remind us of the home you built with Imam Ali from the timber of trust. If we forget how to raise children, remind us of nights of hunger turned into feasts of gratitude. If we forget how to serve society, remind us of your door, ever opening, ever giving. And if we forget how to speak to power, remind us of your voice, firm, measured, anchored in the book of Allah and the Sunnah, free of bitterness but full of truth. Beloved lady, the world changes and we change with it, but your measure does not. In times of triumph, you kept us humble. In times of loss, you kept us whole. You taught us that the path from Mecca to Medina is not just a migration of bodies, but a migration of hearts. From fear to trust, from self to service, from noise to meaning. After the victory of Mecca, when the world might have worshipped its own reflection. You kept worship for Allah alone. So we ask, as mourners who love, as students who long to learn, intercede for us, that we might love as you loved, stand as you stood, give as you gave, and guard as you guarded. Make our homes small sanctuaries of light. Make our words reflections of justice. Make our hands safe for the poor. Make our hearts steady in the storms to come. O Allah, send your blessings upon Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, upon Fatimah the radiant, the pleasing and well pleased, upon Ali the truthful guardian, upon Hassan and Hussein, the leaders of the youth of paradise, upon Zainab, the tongue of patience and the spine of Karbala. Let our tears bear witness to love. Let our love bear witness to truth. And when our names are forgotten by the earth, let our deeds remember her, for she remembered you. Peace be upon you, O the daughter of the messenger. Peace be upon you, O wife of the guardian of the faithful. Peace be upon you, O mother of the leaders and the witnesses. Peace be upon you, O heart of the Prophet's home, and to Allah we shall return. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٌ يَنْقَلِبُونَ إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ صلوات على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه.
We now enter into Lamentation, the language of the brokenhearted. Tonight's Nohe is titled The Mother of Martyrs, a title that carries infinite sorrow, for she who buried her father witnessed the usurpation of her husband's rights and knew through divine knowledge the martyrdom awaiting her sons. You can listen again and explore more at www.shiasounds.com.
The mother of martyrs, born of Mustafa, the love of Murtada, beloved Zahra, the mother of martyrs, born of Mustafa, the love of Murtada, beloved Zahra, the sweetness of her voice that whispered Ali. They left her with no choice, in exile she'd be the purest believer, O Lady of Light, the mother of martyrs, so painful your plight. The mother of martyrs, born of Mustafa, the love of Murtada, beloved Zahra. The garden was left then, no hand for to tend, no flower bloom therein, for Zahra the end. The essence of piety, stillborn on the breeze, for the sake of dear Zahra, men weep on their knees. The mother of martyrs, born of Mustafa, the love of Murtada, beloved Zahra. The tears that we shed now for sweet Fatimah, they flow like deep rivers perfumed by Zahra. Yet lonely she lies now, abandoned by time. Tyrants still oppress her, repeat this foul crime. The mother of martyrs, born of Mustafa, the love of Murtada, beloved Zahra. The darkness of death would be spared for Zahra, the prison of this world forsaken by her. So many long years since she left her dear sons, she left her dear Ali, the bravest of ones, the mother of martyrs, born of Mustafa, the love of Murtada, beloved Zahra. Come look at this sad place, I beg you come see. Come gaze at the dust here, at lonely Baqi. Can you see the graves and their love for Rasul? They treat his sweet daughter so callous and cruel. The mother of martyrs, born of Mustafa, the love of Murtada, beloved Zahra. Why the lowest of the low lay rested in shrines, the highest of women betrayed for all time. The plight of sweet Zahra seems never to end. Her suffering continues, our faith never ends. The mother of martyrs, born of Mustafa, the love of Murtada, beloved Zahra. We call out to Zahra, please come to our aid, destroy all corruption the tyrants have made. In our hearts the intention to visit your land, to kiss the soil round you, to hold in our hands. The mother of martyrs, born of Mustafa, the love of Murtada, beloved Zahra. Our tears run with blood for Hassan and Hussein. Our hearts bleed the perfume of Ashura's flame. Oh, now, my beloved, sweet sister of mine, your fragrance of morning adorns your sweet shrine. The mother of martyrs, born of Mustafa, the love of Murtada, beloved Zahra. Your resting place I see, 'tis golden and fine, 'tis rich with pure jewels, acquired through time. The floor and the ceiling of silver and gold, adorned by the martyrs and all saints of old. The mother of martyrs, born of Mustafa, the love of Murtada, beloved Zahra. Yet how, I hear asked of me, can this be the way? I'll tell you now, brethren, hear well what I say. The diamonds are Ali, the rubies Hussein, the emeralds are Hassan, the gold is Khomein. The seal of your coffin is Mustafa's word, the purest of Allah for all of the worlds. Your grandson bears witness, alone there he weeps. He mourns for his Ummah, so blinded by sleep. And if you see this vision, then rise in his name. The wait it has ended, your victories to claim. The mother of martyrs, born of Mustafa, the love of Murtada, beloved Zahra. The mother of martyrs, born of Mustafa, the love of Murtada, beloved Zahra. The mother of martyrs, born of Mustafa, the love of Murtada, beloved Zahra.
We now conclude with the communion of Sayyidah Zahra, a poetic visitation to the mistress of all women. This is not merely a recitation, but a spiritual journey, crafted by the Truth Promoters Group as an English rendering that captures both the majesty and the tragedy of her story. It is a whisper between the mourner and the mourned, a plea from the lost to the guide. The full text and audio are available at www.shiasounds.com.
Peace be upon you, O Zahra. daughter of God's final messenger, mother of martyrs. You whose suffering God witnessed and recorded, whose home was violated by those who claimed to serve the very God who had honored you above all women of the world. Peace be upon the fragrant flower of the prophet, the one God's messenger kissed each morning in divine reverence, crushed beneath the door by those who forgot that God sees all injustice, records every oppression. Peace be upon you, O wife of God's lion. You who learn that when people abandon God's justice, no earthly fortress can protect, no claim of faith can shield from those who betray His trust. Through God's infinite knowledge, your broken ribs became the first crack in the foundation of every Muslim home. Your stolen garden, which God had granted you, became the first theft of divine inheritance. Your testimony, heard and preserved by God Himself, became the first silencing that He would avenge. And now, by God's will, I see in every door kicked down in Palestine, in every woman whose God-given dignity is violated, in every sacred marriage that humans tear apart against His command, I see God. I see God allowing your door to splinter again, that we might remember His justice is coming. Peace be upon Muhsin, the unborn martyr whom God had already named in heaven, the one God took as the first innocent witness, the first of millions He would gather to testify on the day of judgment. Not killed by swords, but by the weight of oppression that God allowed to reveal the truth of hearts by those who couldn't wait for God's decree before stealing what He had ordained as yours. And I weep before God for every Muhsin whose soul He breathes into the womb, only to have his creation declared inconvenient, murdered before breathing the air God had prepared for them. For every Muhsin crushed in Gaza's rubble, still in the sanctuary of the womb God designed, until the bombs, funded by those who claim to follow God, violate even that sacred space. For every marriage that God joined, but humans tear apart, treating his sacred covenant like a disposable contract, aborting the mercy he placed between spouses. O Zahra, through you I plead to God. They crushed your Muhsin to steal what God had given you, and today they crush millions of Muhsins, stealing the very humanity God breathed into us. I bear witness before God, you established the home as his fortress on earth, even as he allowed its door to burn to test humanity's commitment to justice. You were the manager of divine tranquility, the lady of the house where God's light dwelt, managing heaven's blessings with earthen hands that he strengthened. Through you, God taught us that loving mercy is his gift requiring cultivation, that compassion is his strength given to the righteous. You lived as the perfect, fragrant flower, giving fragrance even while being crushed, showing us how God's servants emit beauty through suffering. And Ali lived as the perfect protector, protecting the strength God gave him, serving as God commanded, providing not just bread, but the dignity God demands for all. Together by God's design, you wove the first tapestry, each thread a divine lesson, that marriage is God's earthly sign of his mercy, that true dowry is simplicity before him, that two souls can face the world's hatred and still find his tranquility reflected in each other's eyes. God strengthened you to rise, broken-ribbed, bereaved, betrayed, and speak his truth in the mosque where they thought they could silence half of his creation. Not begging for property, but declaring God's justice. Not pleading for pity, but performing the autopsy of a nation that had murdered its covenant with God. Through divine inspiration, you clarified, showing them how they had divorced themselves from God while claiming to be his deputies on earth. And God preserves your voice today in every woman who says enough with his strength, in in every mother who refuses the false mercy of euthanasia, in every daughter who will not let them sell the dignity God gave her. But where are we before God's throne? When we shatter the marriage He blessed, when we abandon the elderly He commanded us to honor, when we murder the souls He's breathing into wombs, when we break the homes He meant as sanctuaries. O Zahra, through you I confess to God, they broke your home to steal power from Him. We break our homes and call it freedom from Him. You were the truthful one, the one whom God granted vision beyond the veils of time. Through His knowledge, you saw your son's martyrdom before his birth, Zainab's sermon before she could speak, Karbala's tragedy written in God's preserved tablet. And God shows you our state now, building houses but not homes for Him, having weddings but not marriages blessed by Him, birthing children but not raising His servants, aging in bodies but not growing closer to Him. You witness, by God's will, men who memorize your words while crushing what God entrusted to them, claiming to be protectors, but acting as the tyrants He forbade. You see through His light women who weep for you while breaking their own covenants with God, abandoning the children He gave them, neglecting the parents He commanded them to honor. You observe the scholars who mourn your tragedy, while enabling the very injustices God sent you to oppose. But God also reveals to you the mothers of Gaza who shield their children with faith in Him, the wives of prisoners who wait with trust in His promise, the daughters who speak His truth to earthly power. You see the hands that still weave with faith in God. In Yemen's camps, where His name is hope. In Bahrain's basements, where His justice is awaited. In South Lebanon's resisting homes, where they teach children to love God through loving you. And God shows you Him, your hidden Son, the awaited one, whom God has prepared as earth's salvation, who carries your grief as part of God's plan for justice. Every broken home increases the sorrow God has placed upon his heart. Every abandoned elder delays what God has decreed for his return. Every aborted future grieves the divine plan he will fulfill. For how can God send him to heal when we insist on wounding his creation? How can the divine unity manifest when we choose to scatter from his robe? O daughter of God's beloved, I come to you and through you to God, broken by my distance from his commands, my home fractured by my failures before him, my tapestry torn by choosing other than what he chose. I have not been what God commanded me to be, not the garment that conceals faults as he instructed, not the fortress of divine tranquility he meant me to be. I have treated his sacred trusts as disposable, valued this temporary world over his eternal promise, chosen comfort over his covenant. But through your teachings, God has shown me that he accepts the repentant, that oppression must be named before him, that his patience has limits, and that some separations are his mercy. So I pledge before God, through your intercession, to honor marriage as he revealed it to you, to protect children as he commanded through you, to speak his truth against tyrants as you spoke it, to weep, but weep productively as you wept in the house of sorrows. With God as my witness, I will not let them normalize breaking his design. I will not let them call murder healthcare when he calls it killing. I will not let them make his sacred bonds into marketplaces. God reveals that the assault on your home continues, not with swords, but with systems that oppose his order. They don't burn the door, they foreclose the homes God meant as sanctuaries. They don't crush the baby, they make God's gift of children seem unbearable. They don't steal fadak, they steal the very possibility of the inheritance he promised. the same forces that martyred your Hussein, now martyr the family God established as society's foundation, making men too broken to be the protectors God appointed, making women too exhausted to be fragrant flowers God intended, making children orphans while their parents live but don't parent as God commanded. And the scholars who should defend God's plan through your legacy debate your history while his principles are slaughtered. O Zahra, ask God to wake us from this sophisticated slumber. God has made you not just Hussein's mother, but the spiritual mother of every revolution he inspires against injustice. Your DNA, by God's design, runs through Gaza's mothers who gather their children's pieces while praising him. Your strength, which God gave you, flows through wives whose husbands are disappeared by those who deny his justice. Your wisdom, inspired by God, guides daughters who refuse to let materialism consume what he made sacred. Every woman who says no to commodification of God's gifts, every mother who refuses to abandon the role he gave her, every wife who demands his justice, not just patience, is your daughter in his sight. And every man who protects as God commanded without oppressing, who provides as God instructed without dominating, who leads with service as God's prophet showed, is Ali's son in divine truth. God made the family the last fortress against the empire of isolation from him. And that is why his enemies targeted it. With debt, with drugs, with despair, with false freedoms that imprison souls from him. But God preserves your memory, your home, small, simple, sacred to him, where his appointed leader played with his children, where the mistress of all women ground grain with hands he blessed, where heaven touched earth by his command. O Zahra, by your suffering that God witnessed, by your rights that God will restore, by your unborn whom God received as martyr, by your testimony that God preserved, I swear before the throne of the Almighty, I will not let them break another door without standing for God's justice. I will not let them crush another soul without raising my voice for his truth. I will not let them steal another inheritance without demanding what God has decreed. O God, through your beloved Zahra, count me among those who choose difficulty with dignity in your path over ease in distance from you, who choose simple weddings blessed by you over extravagant divorces that anger you, who choose present parenting as you commanded over profitable absence that you forbade, who choose your covenant over worldly contracts. Let my home be your sanctuary of tranquility, even if small. Let my marriage reflect your mercy, even if tested. Let my children for your servants, even if few. We send our condolences, asking God to convey them to you, for all He tested you with, and all you endure in witnessing our failures. To your father, God's beloved prophet, whose nation betrayed God's clearest command through him. To your husband Ali, whom God strengthened to hold you as you return to Him, who built you a house for grief by divine permission. To your sons, Hassan, poisoned, Hussein, beheaded, who inherited the resistance God placed in your heart. To your daughters, Zainab and Kulthum, who carried God's message through your voice to tyrants, and especially to your hidden son, the awaited one, whose heart God fills with grief for every broken home, every abandoned divine principle, every betrayed covenant with the Almighty. To our leader, Imam Khamenei, whom God has appointed to guard the fortress of divine authority. To the martyrs' families who understand that God's pleasure matters more than life. To every woman facing abuse behind closed doors. God sees you. To every man struggling to be worthy, God strengthens those who turn to Him. To every child growing up in wreckage, God is the protector of the orphan. We send condolences that you must live in a world that learned nothing from God's lesson through Fadak. But God's dawn is coming. Your son will return by His command, and he will ask in God's name. Did you preserve the families God entrusted to you? Did you protect the woman God honored? Did you raise the children God sent as trust? Did you maintain the homes God meant as sanctuaries? Or will He find empty houses, full of possessions, but empty of God's remembrance? Broken contracts instead of divine covenants? Abandoned elders and unborn dead against God's command? A wasteland where God's garden should be? O Zahra, ask God to help us prepare for the path of your Son. Plead with Him to help us mend what we've torn. Intercede for us to rebuild what we've demolished. Beg Him to make us worthy of the return He has promised. Let every marriage be a sign of God's coming justice. Let every child raised in faith be a soldier for his cause. Let every home that stands against the storm be a fortress of the divine revolution. Until God sends it, we are his servants through you. Our homes are dedicated to God through your example. Our struggles are offered to him through your intercession. Our children are raised for God, inspired by your teachings. Through you, we ask God to use us to prepare the world for your awaited Son. And we beg God's forgiveness through your intercession. For every door we fail to defend in his name, for every covenant with him we broke, for every sacred trust from him we violate. Peace be upon you, O daughter of God's final messenger, O wife of God's appointed successor, O mother of God's awaited proof. Until God takes our souls, until he brings the meeting of eternity, until he fills the sky with your Son's banner. We remain before the Almighty, your unworthy servants, seeking his mercy through you, his broken children seeking his healing through you, his hoping slaves seeking his forgiveness through you. Through the broken home of Zahra, we return to the eternal abode of God. Our Lord, O most merciful, O most compassionate, accept this whisper, accept this communion, accept this ballad. For you alone are the goal, and you alone remain. Hear our plea, O most merciful of the merciful. Hear our pleas, O Lord, sustainer of the universes. And from him alone is all ability, and he has authority over all things.
As we close this first night of Fatimiyyah, we leave you with this reflection. In the simplicity of her dowry, we find a revolution against materialism. In the sanctity of her marriage, we find the blueprint for every Muslim home. In her patience under oppression, we find the strength to build families upon faith, not fear. O God, by the right of Fatimah, whose heart was broken for your sake, mend the broken homes of this Ummah and guide us to build our families upon the foundation she established. Tomorrow we continue with night 2, called The Unfolding Tapestry, exploring how to weave a life of love and purpose within the sacred covenant of marriage. Until then, may your tears for Zahra be accepted, and may her legacy illuminate your homes. Peace be upon you, and peace be upon Fatimah Zahra.